All right, welcome back to coverage of Pro Tour Gatecrash here from Montreal. My name is Marshall Sutcliffe. I'm in the booth with Zach Hill, and play is underway with Gabriel Nassif versus Matt Sperling. Matt smiles as he looks at Gabe's turn 2 play, although we can't quite see it.
I think it's a bomber core. No, oh my goodness.
We're getting the voice of Rashad Miller in our ear. He's playing spotter, and he thinks that Nassif might have mulliganed to 3 this game, and it kind of looks like it as we see a full grip for Matt Sperling, and only 1 card left in Nassif's hand after he's dumped 2 creatures onto the table and passed the turn back. It's a Daring Skyjack for Matt Sperling, and it looks like he's got an armored transport, a plane, so he can cast that if he wants. There's also a Martial Glory, a Nav Squad Commandos, and as you can see on the right-hand side of your screen, a Debtor's Pulpit for later in the game. Now,
I will say, for a 3-card hand, Nassif's Bomber Core potentially could take out that Daring Skyjack and the Armored Transport. So it could be a lot worse for Nassif, but of course he doesn't have 3 creatures, and he doesn't have very many cards.
Did he just draw Madcap skills? No, it's a Scorchwalker.
Man.
But he's got a pit fight. Unfortunately, with the creatures that he has right now, it's not going to do a ton of work, and I think he just has to ship the turn back, which is exactly what he does.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, like Nassif looking at Scorchwalker, but I mean, doesn't have the land to cast it, so this might be a pretty anticlimactic game that we're watching right now.
Yeah, the mulligan to 3 will often do that, although we do see it's a Sacred Foundry. It's going to be untapped by Sperling, and he is going to run out True Fire Paladin. Did you make that card, Zach? Because that card is insane.
That card's really good. I actually kept making that card worse in development. Originally, it just had First Strike.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I didn't have to activate it, just permanently had First Strike. And I complained about that for a solid 3 weeks.
And you got it downgraded to
I got it downgraded to merely unbelievable.
Yeah, the card
as opposed to no way you can beat it in the universe.
Can't block.
Without killing it. All right, so they're settling a discrepancy there. Nassif all the way down to 12, and Sperling with a full board. Really just not a whole lot that can happen here.
Willie Adels picked up game 1 over Josh Utter-Layton on the back tables.
Yeah. 7. 5. Yeah.
All right, so Nassif draws his card. He does have another land, but not quite enough mana to do stuff, and a very, very quick game 1 in Sperling's favor.
Yeah, now this is an extreme example. And we're going to talk about that in just a second.
About extreme examples?
Yeah, we're going to talk about an extreme example after this potential message. What I was going to say is you can play Magic at a store near you every Friday. Earn Planeswalker points and battle against your friends in Friday Night Magic. February's F&M promo card is Reliquary Tower. It looks sweet, by the way. And you can visit wizards.com/F&M to find a store near you. I play F&M a lot.
Oh, yeah?
I'm one of those guys, man.
Really,
I just like playing Magic.
There's nothing wrong with playing Magic. I love F&M. I haven't been able to get out, but I need some Planeswalker points so I can play in
get some buys
World Magic Cup qualifiers. Yeah, get some GP buys.
All right, now, the thing I wanted to bring up was, all right, I get it. Nassif mulligan to 3. He's not going to win that game often. But what I like about Boros in this format is that it kind of acts as like a check and balance where it's like, look, if you stumble, if you get too greedy, if your eyes get a little too big for what you're trying to do, Boros will just slam the door on you.
No, that's absolutely right. You know, if you stumble too much, Boros is going to just end the game before you can really get back. I will say something that I admire in Nassif, and really in a lot of the guys you see play at this level, though, is that despite the fact that he was mulling the 3, he was like actively playing that game as though it was a game of Magic.
That's right.
He was keeping up Pit Fight in response to a removal spell, even though his guys were small. He was looking for opportunities to at least like try and leverage what he did have.
Yes.
He had like Viper to come back to sort of hold off, you know, Sperling's guys. I mean, but at the end of the day, you don't have hardly any cards, and you can't really block an armored transport profitably.
Yeah.
But I mean, even just in their bearing, right? Like sometimes you see people not mulling to 3 or 4, but like, yeah, you know, they mulligan to 5, like have totally reasonable hands, but they're just slumped in their chair and look depressed. And it's like you've got to stay in the game of Magic,
Absolutely.
even if your back's against the wall.
That's right. I mean, he knows the percentage chance of him winning that game is extremely low, but there are percentage things.
Right.
Like, why would you just give those away?
Well, like what if Sperling's hand, he keeps 7 cards because he has a 2-drop, and the rest of it's like lands and a removal spell at 5.
Yeah,
right?
or
Who
he's
knows?
got the 3 mountains opener with some
Yeah.
white cards and figures. I've got 9 white sources. I'll get there.
I'll get
And
there,
doesn't.
right.
You know, sometimes that happens. You know, but it is interesting because his Boros deck was able to just shut the door on the situation. If Sperling's, let's say he's playing Orzhov,
Yeah.
it's much slower.
It is a lot
doesn't have
slower.
the ability to just close out the game that quickly. Like a Boros,
For sure.
it can deal big hits with like
yeah.
Shadow Slice, but
Yeah,
that's a
of
much
course.
later game play, you know, and maybe Nassif gets back in the game.
Yeah, of course.
So-
I mean, you know, Orzhov has a lot more removal spells, which also makes it hard if you mulligan that much because you just get 1 for 1 into Oblivion. But yeah, I mean, you definitely have time to draw out of it.
That's right.
It looks like Nassif taking yet another mulligan. Definitely starts to look a little unhappy, but maybe not. He may have just taken a little bit longer to shuffle.
Okay, on our back tables, we've got 3 pretty awesome matches as well. We'll be keeping you updated. We've got Willie Adel. He's playing against Josh Layton. We have Dennis Rashid.
Yeah, quietly 2 Pro Tour top 8s
Yeah,
last season.
like exactly, against Robert Yurkovich, and we have Rob Doherty, Hall of Famer, versus Svi Moshewitz, also
Hall of
So
Famer.
we'll be keeping an eye on those matches as we go. All right,
Sure.
players are looking at their opening 7 here.
Seemed a pretty sick draw out of Sperling's side. He got turn 1 Boros Elite with plenty of other creatures to follow up. Nassif's going to have a lot more defense this game, or
I think
it's going to look a lot like the last one.
I think that Sperling has a 2-land hand, but I believe that Nassif has just a forest in his hand. I don't think he's going to be able to keep that one.
You've got to be disappointed if you're Nassif. I mean, you really want to be able to play some real Magic in this situation. It looks to me like he has 2 forests.
Oh, does he have 2
Yeah,
forests?
so I mean, I think he's got to really think about whether to keep this. Yeah, and he decides.
Oh,
that
okay, I
he's
just
going
missed
to.
the other forest, yeah.
All right, so see Boros Elite, Armor Transport, Court Street Denizen, and Debtor's Pulpit out of Sperling's side. Really, really
Wow.
excellent.
Boros
hand.
Elite, turn 1. So this is not immediate pressure, but it'll get there.
Now, we see, and we got a Riot Gear from Gab. He's got all the cards he needs. Mugging, unbelievable in this matchup.
Fantastic.
You know, got a Warmind Infantry, a 2/3, usually kind of the right numbers, but he just doesn't have the mana to cast any of it right now.
No, he kept a risky 2-land hand, and he hasn't yet drawn any mana sources, let alone the red that he really wants.
Exactly. Even just a red to cast a Mugging. Now, Warmind Infantry out of Sperling's side, and it looks like we're going to see yet another anticlimactic game.
It does indeed. It's sad to say, but this does happen occasionally.
15.
And if Sperling just has any creature right here, it is.
He has a True Fire
devastating.
Paladin, but he's also got a 3, it looks like, and he's going to play Court Street Denizen. So this is going to effectively lock out whatever it is that Gab does, and he does find a play.
Just any white creature here is.
Yeah, he has multiples.
Yeah, there
True
it
Fire
is.
Paladin, trigger, attack you.
A cool
All right, now,
9 points
he
of
didn't
damage.
announce his trigger, which you should do, but he did say that you're taking the
9.
damage, and that's all you actually need to do.
And that's the
Gab is forced to scoop it up. So a quick 2-game match here, as Nassif can never really get anything going.
No, I mean, just
against
actual
Sperling.
nothing happened.
That's right. All right, so we're going to take you to one of the back tables.
As good as it's going to get for me, I guess.
My colors, my guild, my shirt. Proclaim your allegiance today by purchasing your guild apparel at mtgmerch.com. I am, in fact, wearing one of those shirts right now.
As am I. You know, it's Tim
Mine
Willoughby.
just looks better than yours.
Oh, it does?
Yeah.
Oh, I
that's
see
just,
how it is.
That's expert commentary for you there. So it looks like we're going to see Rob Doherty versus Svi.
Yeah.
Which is fantastic.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see that match.
Svi came out to, there he is right there, came out to Grand Prix Atlantic City and had a deep run, played for top 8 twice, wasn't able to quite get there, but he certainly hasn't lost his abilities.
definitely
Even
was
though he
playing
doesn't
his
play
deck.
quite as much as he used to.
Yeah, right, exactly. I was playing his deck at that event. It was an unbelievably good deck.
I got a chance to watch you play it. It was. I loved watching you play. It
Well,
was great.
I mean, the thing about Zvi is that like he's a great deck designer. It's also really good at making just incredibly streamlined, aggressive decks.
Oh, okay.
And like all of his aggro decks just feel so much better because like they use their mana every turn. They've got really high average card quality.
All
And what is going on here?
Yeah, well, it looks like he just battled in with a bunch of stuff. Drakewind Krasis with Stolen Identity on it, which gets blocked. And a bunch of trades basically just happened, leaving Svi with a Krakenura and 2 unknown copied tokens. I don't know what they've copied.
Planeswalker points.
They're Planeswalker points, yeah. They could be Drakewind Krasis.
All right. Now we see.
All right, empty board.
Oh, wow.
And it looks like Doherty is forced to get back a creature, and he's going to have to encode this onto something with Defender.
Yeah.
Or just not encode it.
Yeah, I mean, you probably just encode it. And then, I mean, he gets an extort out of it, so.
Sure.
I mean, it's not really what you want to be doing, but, like, you also don't want to be just sitting around doing nothing
No,
either.
sometimes
so.
you need Disentomb.
Yeah.
Even if it costs 4 in this case.
Right.
It's conditional. All right, pass the turn back to Svi. And he's going to attack with all 3 creatures. Still not sure what those tokens are. Can you guys get us what those tokens are?
Yeah, it blocks the Krakenura. We have heard these are crowned Ceratok tokens.
So these are both 4/3 trample. So this is going to end this game very quickly if Rob can't come up with some answer. And this is a scoop.
Yeah.
So he is going to concede. And that's game 1 for you there. So Svi is up a game over Rob Doherty there. Again, battle of the Hall of Famers here.
Yeah.
Now, I guess that we saw Svi trade off his creature that had the Stolen Identity on it, but he had already gotten 2 extra Crown Ceratok, so he was like, I'm in a great board position here anyway. Looking to face a greater challenge, take your game to a Grand Prix and see how you fare against the best players in your region, as well as top visiting Magic pros. Upcoming Grand Prix include Quebec City, that's next weekend, Charlotte, Yokohama, Verona, Utrecht, and San Diego. For more information, visit wizards.com/Grand Prix.
Hey, you're going to be at Quebec City, aren't you, Mark?
I am. I'm going to be doing coverage there. I'm excited.
Yeah. You get to hang out in Canada some more.
I do. I'm going to be here for the week. And I've never been to Montreal. I think it's a great city. I've really enjoyed myself so far. I highly recommend visiting it, especially if there's a Pro Tour here. Even better.
So we've seen Rob in the feature match area twice right now. He's got what looks to be a lot more slower controlling Orzhov deck. But both times it's hasn't really seemed to be able to get off the ground.
We have kind of noticed that he's in a position where he needs a huge equalizer spell and hasn't had it. And that usually means that your deck isn't quite proactive enough to put yourself in a position to win.
I was talking to Zvi earlier last week, and he said he basically always wants to be in Simic. He thinks that like the Orzhov cards, too many people are fighting over those, and same with the Boros cards. And moreover, like when you don't get the super aggressive Boros deck, it's just kind of awkward. You just have this
They call it slow roast.
Slow roast.
Yeah, if it's the less awesome version.
That's funny. So he basically declared like I'm just going Simic all the time. It sounds like he's on plan right now.
Yeah, I wonder when he got that Stolen Identity. That card is, I really like that.
That card's unbelievable.
One of the questions I had about Stolen Identity, or at least the Stolen Identity made me think of, was how much would I pay just for a clone?
Right.
Like 6 is maybe a little much, but it's not that far. Like
the actual card clone is like a very, very, very good limited card.
Very, very good limited card, and it feels usually like it's aggressively costed, right? You're paying 3 clone, for those of you that don't know, is 3 in a blue, and you get to copy a creature that's on the battlefield. It's a creature itself. Stolen Identity, though, is close to what I would pay for a clone anyway, and it has this ridiculous upside of making more clones.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that I'd be just excited to have a 6-man clone, but it is very, very close.
Approaching it, yeah.
And of course, like, you just start making more clones, and that's when things get truly unreasonable.
That's right. All right, so players are being kind to our spotters. Getting all the cards entered at first takes a second, so we're just getting that so we can get players' hands for you, and then they're going to start play. So that should just take a second here. You know how Magic players are. We like to flick the cards around
of course.
And move them. And we get a good look at them here, too, as well. It's nice to have the hand viewer kind of for reference. We can go back to it and kind of see where people are at.
Now Zvi here has land in a Cloudfin Raptor, island in a Cloudfin Raptor, which is exactly what you want, but he can't do anything else.
Yeah.
So I have to imagine he's going to be mulliganing this one. And
well,
looks like Rob's mulliganing, too.
I don't think he...
Yeah.
Oh, they're just going to mulligan anyway?
Yeah.
Yeah, so the spotters will tell them, we only need to do that when you're going to keep it.
Yeah, right.
So I think like that they just can make sure that they resolve all mulligans, get to the point where they're done resolving mulligans, and then we'll have them do it.
Well, it is fun to celebrate someone's colossally bad opening hand.
It is, and we get like a microscopic look at their awful hand.
But I mean, I saw what Rob's deck has going on there. I mean, it sounds like he's leaning pretty heavily on the 1/4 defender with Extort. I think he actually just wants to close out basically every game with Extort cards. Doesn't look like he has the beatdown oriented. You know, he's not Syndic of Ties. I mean, he may have one, but I think he's looking to make the game go long.
Yeah.
And just kind of grind you out.
Yeah, but it looks like Zvi is pretty okay with the game going long. You know, one thing about Simic is that it is capable of quick starts, but doesn't often get them because it relies pretty heavily on those really early drops. But, man, you get to the mid to late game, and they make some really impressive board states.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Simic can come out of the gates fast, but it doesn't fade.
Yeah.
You know, because it's not as though, like, your 4/3 is going to suddenly become bad on turn 9.
Right, and, you know, one of the things we saw from Ben Stark in the early rounds was he was able to cap off his curve with an adaptive Snapjaw.
Right.
And he evolved like 3 or 4 creatures that turn.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
I mean, 6/2, you know, a very deliberately designed card to like turn on all of the common evolve guys.
That's right.
I think actually basically every evolved creature in the format. So, I mean, yeah, when you're just casting Thrive on your team every turn, kind of activating Gavany Township while also casting creatures.
Yeah.
Clearly, you can play for the long game.
Your decision is first, sir?
Oh, sorry, I'm keeping.
Yeah, so they made sure, and it looks like Zvi's got to ship his hand back as he has no lands.
No lands. He has double Cloudfin Raptor, but no lands to go with it.
You know, we were doing a side draft, and I had a double Cloudfin Raptor opener, but I didn't have green mana, and I decided to keep it. I lost. But it's interesting to see that had I drawn green mana, things get out of hand really quickly. You know, this thing...
I think on 6, I'll settle for one of the 2 colors in gray.
Yeah.
Not the
Yeah,
wrong
but
one, the right one always.
I feel like Simic is... It's one of those decks where when I first saw it, I didn't like it that much. And the reason why was because I felt like I had to work too hard to get up to these big creatures where, let's say I'm in Gruul. I just play Gruul. I just cast those creatures, and they're already 5 power, and they're huge. But when I looked a little further, I saw that Simic could hit from angles that like Gruul couldn't, and I kind of like it.
No, I totally agree. I mean, Simic's a little more of counterintuitive deck. I mean, you have to prioritize cards like Hands of Binding and Pit Fight a lot higher, I think, than you would in Gruul just because you don't have access to the red removal. But I think once you figure out how to draft the deck, it's very fast and yet very resilient at the same time.
Good. All right, so Zvi did keep his hand. It's a mountain for, a swamp for Doherty.
Yeah. Go.
Zvi in his little voice.
I turn 3 probably is going to extort me.
Yeah. Basilica Screecher getting in for massive 1 point of damage.
18.
All right, so 3 islands on Zvi's side.
No, not at all.
That's unfortunate. I need you to experience similar problems.
Doherty's got a Kingpin's Pet, as you can see. No white mana source, though.
He's off to the races.
And there's a green.
Yeah.
Go ahead. I mean, not yet.
Your animated Zvi Moshowitz.
Hall of Fame Zvi Moshowitz, ladies and gentlemen.
Pretty excited about his Krakenura and the prospect of one day evolving. Although right now it looks like it's free attacks for Rob Doherty.
swing. Take the 3.
And just blocks with Krakenura, they sort of bounce off each other.
That's right.
There's no reason not to attack.
Extort.
Oh, man.
Wow, double extort.
Getting the
Who
drain
needs white
on.
mana?
Yeah. Doherty mono black.
Here you go.
Passes the turn back, and it's another forest, so Svi does get to get some evolution happening here.
Yeah,
Let's see what he does.
And Leyline Phantom, just an underrated card in general, I think. Like, 5/5 is gigantic in this format.
Massive.
And, like, you don't mind that you can keep casting it over and over and just evolving all your creatures.
Not at all. And on defense, it's particularly good because, yeah, it's going to eat something. Yeah, it goes back to your hand, but you just replay it and eat something else.
Right. Yeah, like whenever you're abyssing your opponent, you don't mind having to cast spells every turn.
That's right.
Now we see from Rob, he's got a white of Precinct 6 that's only a 1/1 right now. The rest of his cards require white that he doesn't have, but he still gets to extort twice.
Yeah, he is really just running the extort game here. Yeah. Even though he has no attacks, he's still able to get in for life loss.
Yeah, the Krakenura at 2/4 in concert with the Phantom just holding off Rob's entire team.
And it looks like Svi says, well, I'm going to battle then.
Yeah, well, why not? He's just, yeah, he can just cast it again and keep evolving.
Yeah, this is a pretty easy take for Rob Doherty as he's going to drop him to 19.
19? Yep. Gets back to my hand.
All the way down to 19.
Yeah, back down to 19. And here comes the big 5-drop.
Yeah, just making it happen.
Yep. Go.
Rob just dying for a plains right here.
That's absolutely true. He doesn't, though. He draws a land, but it's a swamp.
It is a swamp, which is actually exactly what he doesn't need here. At the very least, he'd like to be able to start extorting.
That's right, and he actually can't cast any spells from his hand here.
I think he's deciding whether it's even worthwhile to play in the swamp, but yeah, I mean, clearly it is. I think he'd really like to cast like a Balustrade Spy right now and try to do something with that white at Precinct 6.
Absolutely.
You see,
all right, passes the turn back, so a little bit of a reprieve for Svi here, who slams that Leyline Phantom into the red zone.
Yeah, just play one way, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, it looks like the white is just going to jump in front of the Phantom and just represent a big, like basically an unsummon.
I think so, and maybe that lets him cast the Raise Dead in some sort of meaningful way.
Yeah.
I see.
I mean, because the white just not accomplishing a whole lot.
And Svi's able to use up all of his mana this turn as he plays a Greenside Watcher along with replaying the air quotes vigilant Leyline Phantom. And another white card.
Yeah, I mean,
Executioner's Swing for Doherty, another card that he can't cast, and Svi is very much still in this game. He is in this match, excuse me, in this game. He's up a game in the match already. So if he can manage to keep pressure with that Leyline Phantom and Rob doesn't draw a white mana source, it can get pretty good. And look how aggressive Svi's being here.
Yeah, I mean, you know, Svi mulligan to 5, I wasn't really expecting a lot out of his hand, but I mean, just firmly in command of this game with Rob having no planes.
And you can see that Svi is happy to get super aggressive here because he knows that Rob is missing planes and he knows he's going to hit it at some point.
Right.
Ending the game as quickly as possible is now in Svi's favor in a big way.
9, 10, 11. You're at 8.
You take 11, you go to 8.
Right. And we're just going to see even more Phantasm.
That's right. And is that going to still yeah, he's still, I think this is the last time he gets to evolve. Yeah, it is, but there it is. You know, it's interesting because he's kind of flooding out, but this is actually okay for him. All right, all right, now Rob has drawn a Devour Flesh.
Kind of awkward because he's the extort
Watcher.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, in the extort, you know, he's not going to get one of the points of damage in essence because the Watcher gains him a life.
That's true.
But I mean, right now Rob needs to gain life for himself.
That's right.
And he still gets to extort for 3. So definitely, as long as he's drawing spells he can cast, he's doing something productive.
That's right. He could also attack for 2 with the Screechers here if he wanted. Looks like he's considering it.
5. So he's facing 12 points of damage on the counterattack. I think I like an attack here if you're Rob. I mean, you have to have some sort of plan.
That's right.
Yeah, I mean,
it does commit you to blocking with the Syndicate Enforcer, but that's what you're going to do.
Right, and like you really don't want to block with your Basilica Screechers.
No.
Like they are how you're going to win the game. You're going to either keep extorting or keep hitting for 2 in the air
Right.
and hoping to make something happen. I mean, you're not in an ideal situation, so you have to play to your outs.
All right, so Svi has a pretty straightforward turn here, although let's see what he draws.
You
Is
see
it another
again,
forest? Jeez, he has drawn so many lands this game.
yeah, Svi's draw really quite bad.
It's super
But
poor.
it's
Nothing like mulligan to
doing
5
work.
and to draw all lands, but he has found a way to put a bunch of pressure on his opponent, mainly because Rob doesn't have a white mana source.
Right.
But still, Svi, you know, he was up against it pretty quickly. We saw Rob just curve out on him.
Now, and notice how Rob holds the Devour Flesh for Svi's turn to get him to commit to an attack.
That's right. And he plays it and extorts all 3 of them.
Yeah, I mean, Extort, you know, takes V down to 6, plus 1 more for the Devour Flesh is what we expect. And Rob all the way up to 11, enabling him to survive this attack.
Yeah, he can take the 10, assuming no combat tricks from Svi. Rob is still alive, and that means that he can attack for 5 with just his creatures. This Svi doesn't put anything on the table. Now, we know Svi won't, but he doesn't. But that's what has to happen for him.
Right.
Toughness, right?
And if he draws a white mana source or a black spell, he can win the turn, win the game next
exactly.
turn. This is some great magic.
Yeah, well, I mean, it goes to show, again, neither player with really an ideal draw, but they're trying to make the most of what they have.
Absolutely, and this is a valuable lesson for those of you watching at home. You know, in that Svi mulligan to 5 and is completely flooded and is fighting for every point of damage.
Right.
And Rob has had half of his deck turned off for the entirety of this game and is still looking for every possible way to win here.
The jig is up.
They're
folks.
taking risks,
The jig
but
is
they're
up.
taking necessary risks.
All right.
No, the G is up there saying, no more evolving for the Krakenura.
Yeah.
It merely has 4 counters.
Yeah.
All right, so does Rob get the plains? He's
It's
not.
a swamp. All right, but the Leyline Phantom has come back down for Svi, so it is going to act as a blocker. So Rob is still a few turns away from actually getting a victory here. He can get Svi down to...
Get him to 2. Or no, he can't.
Yeah,
Sorry.
the
no,
Phantom's here
Phantom
now.
can.
Yeah,
That card can block.
It
turns
can
out.
block, yeah. Again, the pseudo-vigilance comes into play. It's kind of a weird way to think of that, but it is kind of what it's doing. And it looks like Rob might be able to attack with one of his creatures, but not drawing that plains is just devastating for him.
Oh, yeah, exactly. I mean, like, he had a draw that could get around it for a while.
Yeah.
But, I mean, now it's just been way too long,
Yeah.
and it's hard for a deck to function when it can't cast half its spells.
That's right.
So he's thinking, yeah,
Then
I
again,
think you just have
Svi
to
has
attack this
cast 3 spells this game.
I think, yeah, exactly.
He's
3
cast
spells
one of
this
them
game.
4 times.
It turns out that Krakenura is not small.
No. All right, so he does get in with the 1 Screecher, but he's forced now to double chump block, and it's a Cloudfin Raptor for Svi. His draw continues to be just horrific.
Yeah, right.
Awful draw, but...
And just, yep, okay, some blocks, they happen.
All right, so
Gotta
Svi
stay
is
alive.
actually, though, on the verge here of winning this match, making it happen. And look, he even has a lethal Cloudfin Raptor after this. I mean, it's not the best top deck on turn 12 or whatever, but it's actually doing work here.
Sometimes what you need.
Yep.
I mean, and really just the star of this, I mean, the Leyline Phantasm has just actually won the game single-handedly.
Yeah,
for
Leyline
Svi.
Phantom was fantastic for
Phantom.
him. And it's another white card, and you see Rob dejectedly throw them on the table, partly jokingly. He's had this happen enough.
That was, if I
Right.
got
And
plains
that
last turn, I was
is
gonna do the jump.
the match.
I
You're
had
get there.
I had 3 spells.
Oh yeah, you gotta go.
It's
with it.
great. It's
Yeah.
like army.
Hey, everybody, welcome back to the booth. I'm Marshall Sutcliffe, and this is Zach Hill. And I thought that was some great magic. You know, it's interesting how those draws were bad.
Yeah. Oh, we saw a lot of
Very,
bad
very
draws.
bad. Like, those are the type of things that you'll often see people at local tournaments complaining about.
Oh, of course.
They'll say, like, well, how can I ever win?
You'll see people in a lot of tournaments complaining about it.
That's right.
But-
Svi, with the exception of that last turn Cloudfin Raptor, he played 3 spells
Right.
for the duration
The entire
of a
game.
game of Magic, and he found a way to win.
Well, and you might say, okay, like, what did he do? Okay, he attacked and whatever, but he also, like, put those cards into his deck, right? Like, that's exactly what the Leyline Phantom is there for. I mean, it's very, very good in the Simic deck. It's very, very good at stopping attacks, and so, you know, his deck had the equipment to give him what he needed to win. I mean, you also saw him at 6 cards, at 7 cards, he had one land in his hand, but he realized those hands weren't going to do it. And like, instead of saying, oh, I've got a mulligan, that's so sad, he's like, okay, I need to see what hand I can find. Absolutely. And he found a hand that let him win the game.
Yep, I guess that's what you get when you have 2 Hall of Famers battling. All right, they're ready to go back to the news desk now, so we're going to send it back to those guys, and we'll see you guys in a little bit.
Hello everyone, welcome back to the news desk. And so here's the way things stand. 3 rounds are now in the books here at Pro Tour Gatecrash 2013 in Montreal. Fabulous city, fabulous country. 5 more rounds come later. That's your constructed portion. We'll do it all again tomorrow. 16 rounds, you end up with a top 8. Let me talk you through our 2 pods and how we've gone so far. So let's take a look at our pod scoreboard for you. Pretty much all those results are in. So Tomek Pedrakowski, how did he get on? Well, he was up against Shi Bin, and in that one, Pedrakowski ended up losing. He went to 2-1. Shi Bin went to 3-0. There it is for you. Now, that's on the right of your screen. Shi Bin 3-0. Pedrakowski falls to 2-1. Now, Luis Scott Vargas down there, you see, he is 1-2. He was defeated by Mario Burgos of Argentina. Well done to the Argentinian. I imagine he looked at his pod this morning and thought, some pretty big names I recognize there, and some very good players maybe I don't. 2-1 is a very creditable start to his Pro Tour campaign. Then you have Battle of the Basement, goodness me. Paulo Vitor Dama de Rosa, having lost his first round, then he lost to Luis Scott Vargas. That left him up against Ken Yukihiro of Japan, who, as we say, one of the biggest names in the game that a lot of people don't really know. Yukihiro has slipped to the dreaded 0-3 start. He will now need at least 4-1 or better in standard if he's going to come back for day 2. Paulo, meanwhile, off the mark, and let's not forget, he was 0-2 when he won the Pro Tour in 2010. So that's there. And then we also have Williams against Sek. Williams won by 2-1, dropping Ben Sek to 1-2. Now on the other side of the table, we're just taking a look. Some of these results still in because we're still not through the full round. Goodness me. Patrick Chapin was 0-2, and who did he have to play against? Another Hall of Famer, Olivier Rouel, and it was Rouel, the Frenchman, who recently popped back into the European Grand Prix scene with a top 8. Olivier Rouel gets off the dreaded 0. Patrick Chapin, who, let's be honest, is a fantastic constructed player, may have an awesome deck for us over the next 5 rounds, but he will need to go 4-1 or better. Reed Duke, he is still playing against Andreas Nordahl of Norway. They're tied at 1-1, heading towards the end of the round. And then you have Lennart Lindemann, 2-0. He's playing against Don van Ravensvaart, also of the Netherlands, also 2-0. What a performance. 3 lifetime pro points between the 2 of them coming in. Look at the lineup they're up against, and they are battling for a perfect 3-0 record. So that gives you a guide to the scoreboard in our 2 featured pods. But there are lots of other matches going on around the building, and I'm delighted to say we've been welcomed by the man himself, Mr. Stanislav Sivka from the Czech Republic. Now, hopefully, most of you have some idea who Stanislav is, but in case you've forgotten, eggs. Eggs, 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 eggs. Win a Pro Tour. First question, Stanislav. How has your life changed since winning Pro Tour Return to Ravnica last year?
Well, it didn't change much because I've played Magic before the Pro Tour. It was the only thing I did, and I still did the same, but something changed. Like, I feel more comfortable, like I'm not so stressed about my games. I don't feel like I have to prove something to someone. So yeah, I feel like a little bit more comfortable after it, but nothing big changed.
Okay. When you went in to Return to Ravnica, you knew you had a deck that was unusual, that most people wouldn't be playing. You weren't playing a deck that 25% of the field were going to play. Were you excited coming into that Pro Tour, or were you nervous because what if it all goes wrong? How did you feel coming into Seattle?
Like, I felt kind of comfortable because I tested a lot, so I trusted it into my deck, so I feel pretty comfortable with it.
Did you trust your own testing? Because you had a deck that was very ideally non-interactive. You wanted to let them do their thing and then eventually go, you sit quiet over there, I'm going to do some things now, and then you'll shake my hand and I've won. So when you're testing over and over again, is it much harder when there are real people across the table who are really trying to like disrupt the combo and just make sure that your graveyard isn't stacked with all the things you need? Or did you test in a way that you felt, I really, really tried to beat my own deck?
Like, I obviously only didn't go Goldfish or something like that. I play tested with real people, with real decks, so it was quite the same. And
it felt normal. All right. How soon after Seattle did you stop looking at the trophy, stop spending the money, and start thinking about winning this one?
Like, there was like GP right after the Pro Tour, so I have to like go back very like straight. But and then when this Pro Tour came up, I started to prepare, and I obviously like think that I could win another one, but it's like completely unlikely or something like that, but I will obviously do my best to try to defend the trophy.
Okay, everyone who wins a Pro Tour has to be lucky somewhere, because there are so many matches and it's a card game. Sometimes you don't see the lands, sometimes you don't see the spells. We've just watched a game there where one player only has one of his colors, the other player's mulligan to 5 and is flooded. Games like that happen, but somebody wins. How lucky did you feel? Were the points during Seattle where you couldn't really believe that you were still winning, or did it just seem completely normal and it was only afterwards you looked back and went, I just won 18 matches out of 19?
Yeah, like at the moment you feel like it's like the way you expected it's gonna go. Like, I got alliance, I got good spells, but then after you realize I've played 19 matches and nothing bad happened. I always like have lands, nothing like, I didn't get any blowout or something like that. So yeah, when you look back, it's like you feel very lucky. But at the moment you don't even realize that how lucky you are. Like that.
Were there any opponents that you sat down against and you felt like you weren't just playing their cards, but you were really playing them? I think in particular, of course, of Yuya Watanabe, who is such a fantastic player right now, way at the top of the Player of the Year standings. When you sit down and you see you're paired against someone like that, do you do anything mentally to try and up your own game, your own mental state to be ready, or do you just try and stay completely even, whether it's Yuya or Shuhei or someone at their first Pro Tour?
Yeah, like, I still like try to play the same game. Like, I don't use mind trick as much as the other guys doing. Okay. So yeah, I just focus on my game, try to play as technically good as I'm able, and yeah, just play my game and hoping it's gonna be enough.
And generally it is, it turns out. So let's bring ourselves a little nearer to this weekend. I guess a year ago, your choices for who to test with might have been a little different than this time. Did you have emails and tweets from people saying, Stanislav, why don't you come and join our team? Or did you already know who you were going to test with?
Like, I'm still testing with the same guys, with Lukas Jakulovsky, Ivan Floch, and the other Czechoslovakian guys, and I feel very comfortable with them because there's no like language barrier, or we're all our friends, we can like trust each other, so they're not only my partners in testing, but they are real friends in life. So
now, I think that's really important because, as it happened, we shared the same restaurant last night. You're there. And it was clear that on the night before the Pro Tour, a lot of players get very uptight, they're very nervous about, oh, have I got my right 75? And then like the 4 and 5, you Matej Zatlkaj was there, and as you say, Lukas Jakulovsky, yourself and so on, and Robert, and you just seem to be having a great time. And the idea that there was this super important game of Magic coming around the next morning, none of you seem worried by that at all. I think that's a really good way to approach things.
Yeah, I think so, because if you are nervous, it's not gonna do anything good for you. And, you know, we're just doing, all of us, our dreams, like, it's the thing we want to do all our lives, so so we are really happy to be here and be together.
And Montreal is a fantastic place to be. Now, I won't ask you too much about Standard, certainly not about your deck, because we're about to go into Standard. But what I do want to ask you is to give the viewers at home the shape of Standard. Are we going to see, is it very aggressive? Will there be lots of control decks? Will Planeswalkers be everywhere? Are there combo decks? Just give us a sort of a shape for Standard?
Like the format is really aggressive. Like the aggro decks are extremely strong, so you have to be ready if you want to battle them. And even in that case, it's really tough to beat them. Like all the guys are super strong, like Hell Rider, or all the guys like, I don't know, Gatecrash, or other creatures are so powerful that it's really tough to battle them. So you have to really be ready. So your goal could be being a mid-range deck with Huntmasters to defeat them. But in that case, you can be eaten by the controls deck with Sphinx Revelation.
Yes.
So it's really tough to get a good choice for the tournament, and it's not gonna. I don't expect that some deck is gonna dominate the field. Yeah.
Okay, that's a shame because you managed that last time. Okay, how much has Gatecrash changed? Not just in terms of the numbers of cards. We know that Boros Reckoner is going to be a big player, but just tell us about some of the other cards that you've sort of seen around the world of Standard from Gatecrash that you think we're going to see in the next few hours.
Like, obviously the Shocklands have the hugest impact because your mana is going to be much better. You have so many more options, and like even the Flingboard board, the 3/3 haste, it's much better with Stomping Ground. So this card is like insane in this Standard. So yeah, and then from the Gatecrash, like Boros Reckoner is insane. And obviously much more cards, like, you know.
Okay.
You will see a lot of new
We're going to
cards.
see plenty of Gatecrash. All right. Now, this morning, it's draft.
Yeah.
What was your balance in testing between Standard and draft? Players love to draft, and sometimes on a Pro Tour level, the tradition is that players are have to be forced to sit down and play their 20 games of Boros against mid-range Jund or whatever.
Yeah.
So what was your balance?
Like, I like Constructed a little bit more, so it's not so difficult for me because I like both, like, you know.
Yeah.
So I didn't play drafts as much as I could. I played like 10 or 12 or something like, yeah, but I watched the other games and we shared our thoughts, so I feel like comfortable with draft, and so that's it. So.
Okay, so where did you come in this morning? Did you have a plan? Is this a draft format where you can have a plan, or is it all about reading the signals?
Like, actually, I got a plan on the last Pro Tour. I got a problem drafting white.
Okay.
And this Pro Tour, I have a real problem of drafting red. In my drafts, I've lost all the first rounds with my red decks.
Okay.
It's like 5 of them, and won all drafts with my non-red.
Well, I mean, it's pretty clear that red is very popular and has lots of cards
that. It's too overdrafted at the moment. Like, so yeah, my goal at the draft was to avoid red if possible. Like, obviously you can open some rare, and you have to go to it. But my goal was to avoid red.
To avoid red, but once you're out of there, were you hoping that something like Dimir would be open? Because what we've seen from our data from Magic Online is that Dimir is very underdrafted, it's not terribly popular, it's not very strong.
Like, I really like Dimir. You have to know how to draft it. Like,
how'd you draft it? Tell us.
You need some evasion guys with the cipher spells. Like the top guy, one blue sorcery top guy, and not
Hands of Binding.
Yeah,
yep.
It's like extremely good card. People like don't like realize how good it is. Like, I often first pick this card, so it could be like surprising to someone. And if you have like 3 low curve evading creatures and the cipher of spells, your deck is gonna be very good. So yeah, it's my way to.
Okay, so you like Dimir, but you didn't end up Dimir this morning. So
No.
how did you end up? How did the draft go?
Like, I opened the Wrath of God, the 6.
Merciless Eviction.
Yeah. And I followed it with the removal spell for mana, destroy guy, and mail the library. I'm sorry, I don't know.
No, that's all right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And yeah, so it was quite clear that I'm gonna be black-white, and I've picked a lot of Exert guys, like 6 of them, and then I realized that I need low curve to being able to pay extra mana. So yeah, my draft was very clear this morning.
Okay. Do you like Ortsov generally?
Yes. It's okay.
It's very highly ranked on Magic Online for sure.
Like, there are a lot of removal, and it's very strong in this set. Yeah, so.
Okay. 3-0 in draft. By my rating, that's 21-1 since the start of Pro Tour return to Ravnica. Let's see, I guess another 5, 10, 13, 16. I guess with 37-1, you'd take that and be a repeat champion, wouldn't you?
I doubt I'm gonna make it, but I'm obviously gonna do my best.
The odds are against it, but he's going to try. Stanislav Sivka, everyone, an amazing performance at Seattle, and once again, he's opened up undefeated. Stanislav, thanks for being in. So that's Stanislav Sivka there for you here at the news desk. More results coming in for you. Now, I told you about that 2-0 pairing that was in the last round. The two Dutchies playing at 2-0. Van Ravensvaart up against Lindemann, and it is Van Ravensvaart who won that. He is the 3-0. Meanwhile, big matchup, Ben Stark against Galdenis Vidugiris. Well, that ended up 2-1 to Ben Stark. That was that one. So let's just take a look at what happened on there. And there you see Patrick Chapin at 0-3, Reed Duke 2-1, Lennart Lindemann 2-1, Andreas Nordahl 1-2, Olivier Ruel 1-2, Ben Stark 2-1, Galdenis 1-2, and Don van Ravensvaart. Oh my God, there's someone to my left just going, really? Is that how you think my name's pronounced? Let's come back to the news desk. I'm delighted to welcome to the show the man who is 3-0 on the left of that screen. Sir, congratulations, welcome to the show.
Thanks.
Tell me your name properly.
Donald van Ravensvaart.
So I think there were, I think there were about 7 syllables there. I think I may have got 2 of them right.
It wasn't so bad, actually.
Oh, well, thank you so much. Oh, you're very polite. I like you. Welcome to the show. And welcome to the show, the Pro Tour. When you sit down for round 1, or the draft, in your imagination coming into this, are you wanting 7 people you've never seen, never heard of before and hope they're all terrible? Or do you want to see a draft pod like the pod you got?
Well, it's a bit of both, really. Of course, I mean, upon sitting down, you see that this is a very hard pod to beat. But at the same time, it's very exciting, and being the feature draft is very cool, of course. And I've done a lot of test drafts with our Dutch testing group, and I've done almost all of them 2-1 or better, so I feel pretty comfortable with this format.
Tell me who you've been testing with. Give me some of the names of the Dutch players.
The one you surely know is Bram Snepvangers.
Hall of Famer.
Hall of Fame.
Yep.
And then there's the Robert van Medevoort.
A former national champion and also team world champion.
And then we have Thijs de Cler, Lennart Lindemann.
Yep.
Raymond Venus, Daniel, and forgetting names.
All the guys, the guys in the band.
There were 8 of them. Actually.
Sure.
So it was perfect for drafting.
That's a convenient number, isn't it? Okay. So tell us about your PTQ win, because you're from the Netherlands.
This is
but
correct.
I believe your PTQ win came, well, more than a bus ride away from the Netherlands.
This is true.
You won a PTQ in Melbourne. How did that come about? Tell us that story.
Well, the thing is, while my nationality is Dutch, I live in Sydney now.
Oh, okay.
And I've done so for the past 10 months.
Right.
So I'm...
what are you doing out there?
Yes. I've completed my PhD in the Netherlands a year ago, and now I work in Sydney as a postdoctoral research fellow.
Wow,
so
awesome.
I'm a science guy.
Science guy. It's always good. Turns out science and maths quite useful for magic.
This is true.
Okay.
This is true.
So you pop now. How far is Sydney from Melbourne? It's obviously a flight.
It's, I think, 1,200 kilometers.
Yeah, that's enough to qualify as a flight.
Actually, it was more of a touristy trip. So I went with 2 friends, and we wanted to see Melbourne. It was cool, and then we was like, let's play the PTQ.
Oh, might just as well play the PTQ. Yeah. So, did you go into the PTQ with any expectation at all of winning?
Well, no, I guess not. I guess not. To be fair, no.
Sure.
I mean, I did expect to do well, but because limited is my format, so I feel very comfortable in any set, really. But I mean, to win a PTQ, aside from having a good pool and playing well, you need a bit of luck as well.
Always.
So yeah, it's not reasonable to expect to win a PTQ, I don't think.
Okay.
But,
so then you travel quite a long way to get here. How's the whole sleep pattern thing going?
I arrived last Sunday, so by now, and also because of science, I go to a lot of conferences, so I'm used to the whole jet lag thing.
I thought you were going to say because of science I've cured jet lag.
No,
Which would have been awesome.
I wish I had.
Wow, what a guest. Goodness me.
Been awesome.
Okay, but because of science, you do a lot of travel, so I get that. All right, so you come in this morning, you have this killer draft pod. Where are you sitting? Who's on your right and left?
On the right is Nord.
Andres Nordahl. From Norway,
On
yeah.
the left is Ben Starr.
Okay.
And then on the opposite, I see all the awesome names.
Or the other people you know from coverage, sure.
People I was thinking, this is like a top 8 pod.
Yeah, and wouldn't that be great to replicate sometime later on?
Yeah, I would not be against that.
Now, actually, I imagine that having Ben Stark on your left, you probably drew a little bit of comfort from, because he's such a great drafter that you have a very good idea that if you send him any kind of reasonable signal, he is going to pick it up, he's likely to do the right thing, and he's likely to reward you in pack 2.
This draft went a lot better than all drafts I've played previously, because on Magic Online there's a very there's good players and bad players.
A
There's
wide range.
Yeah, a lot of variance. And in our testing group, of course, this is a little less so, but they were the first couple of drafts we were playing, and you could clearly tell in this pod that those were experienced drafters, so it was, it went a lot more smoothly than my previous drafts.
So did you come in with a plan, or are you all about being open, you can go wherever the draft sends you?
2 drops. 2 drops are key. I had 9.
Are you a Boros guy? Or are you just anything that costs 2, you'll kind of cram it in? Are you Orzhov?
I'm a red guy, so it's either Boros or Gruul so far.
Okay.
And 9 2 drops doesn't hurt, of course.
No, and so do you end up Gruul or do you end up Boros?
This time it was Gruul.
Okay. Talk then a little bit for people at home who are just starting to feel their way into draft format here with Gatecrash, the Blood Rush cards. How often are they pump spells, and how often are your skin brand goblins 2 1s for 2 with no ability?
Skin brand goblins are often pump spells.
Okay.
But because they're 2 drops, it's so when I get to 2 mana and I've got 3 2 drops to play, it'll usually be the last 2 drop I play, because this one doubles up as a pump spell. So I would much rather play like the Disciple of the whatever it is that gives first strike.
The old ways, the 2/2 with the red for activation.
Yep. Any other kind of spell that doesn't pump.
Sure.
It's just a straight up 2 drop. Obviously, if you have the I forgot the name of that as well. The Burning
Tree Emissary, yep.
That one is, of course, excellent.
Chain.
I've done it a couple of times in testing, and I've done it once today as well. So that's
excellent.
It's always very hard to lose when you do that.
Yes, because that's such a tempo bump, isn't it, for sure.
But I feel Gruul is the best for the 2 mana Dork plan, because, in this draft I had 18 creatures, 8 of which had Blood Rush, and it just gives so much flexibility. You always have something to do.
So you win your first round, and then yet more good players get in the way in round 2. Did it feel a little bit surreal sitting down against the other Dutchie in the pod at 2-0, having sort of kicked out all these Hall of Famers and big name pros, and you try getting constructed, we're going to have our own little private final in round 3?
Well, I mean, after the draft, I talked to my fellow countryman.
Sure.
And he was the only Dimir drafter, I think, in our pod, and he had an amazing deck.
Yeah, that figures. When you get Dimir, you really do get Dimir.
Yeah. This is true. I think there were 3 or 4 red drafters in the pod. So it's a very popular color, obviously. So I expected him fully actually to get to the finals. Yep. But I also knew it would be a relatively good matchup for me, because I just rush him out.
You just get there before he can set things up, don't you?
But it was very hard. I very, very nearly lost actually. So it was an epic match.
Okay. Now I won't ask what you've got for standard. We keep that under wraps. But as the day goes on, we explore the shape of standard. Listen, Don, many congratulations. It's been quite a trek for sort of Netherlands, Melbourne, Montreal.
Yep.
But it's all going very nicely so far. 3-0. Do your name again, because I'm just not going to risk it.
Don van Ravenswaaij.
See? Told you. Thanks a lot, Don. All right, let me give you some more results coming in here at Pro Tour Gatecrash. The round is done. We are dark. We're into the lunch break here at Montreal. Let me just tell you that the last result in our pod, here comes the pod scoreboard, and that was Reed Duke. He was at 1-1 up against Andreas Nordahl of Norway, and it was Reed Duke who won that one to bring him to 2-1. So there's confirmation of our pod scoreboard. On the left, Chapin the big loser, Don there, the big winner, and on the right, Shi Bin, the big winner at 3-0, Yukihira still looking to get off the mark at 0-3. We'll be back with a sort of updated scoreboard. We'll be bringing you some of the big names near the top of the standings as we progress through the day. And I can tell you now that here at the news desk, I've been joined by the Pro Tour historian, Mr. Brian David Marshall. And BDM, I know in that last round in particular, you were out in the trenches, wading your way through the best part of 400 players,
Yes.
seeing what is going on in the world of Gatecrash Draft. So, what is going on in the world of Gatecrash Draft?
I gotta tell you, I definitely saw a lot of people on their heels, Boros decks just coming out, super fast, going wide, as we said in that graphic. The Gruul decks just, having all these tricks, and I really saw. It felt like players trying to do fancy stuff. We did a deck check with Good Data and Sweetie Garris and his Simic deck and his Fathom Mages, and really saw those players kind of on their heels a little bit. People who just, if you are not up to the speed of the format, it's like 2 drops are so essential to getting yourself squared away and being able to not only assault your opponent, but withstand your opponent's assault. We're also seeing some cards. You know what card I saw in a couple different places, and it was fascinating to watch it?
Yep. Hold the Gates. Oh, so this is the +0/+1, and the more gates you have, the bigger the toughness gets, and they're all vigilant.
And vigilance.
And is that the key?
Yes, I've seen it be good without a single gate.
Really?
Sure. Just like, all right, my Ember Beasts kind of just push. They push.
Right, okay.
And, you can't get through them. We also saw, speaking of Ember Beasts, I saw probably the biggest beat of the tournament so far.
Okay, this will be good.
And this happened, fortunately for Sam, to Sam Black.
Okay.
And Sam has 2 Whites of District 6 in play.
Right.
What
kind of size are they?
They are both 2/2.
Okay.
Not very big. It's somewhat early in the game.
Yep.
His opponent has only 2 Ember Beasts. Okay, in his Boros stack.
That's a lot of attack.
Ember Beast.
Yep.
Sam's thinking. He says go. Opponent says, okay, attack with both my Ember Beasts. Sam puts his Whites of District 6 in front of one of the Ember Beasts. He's like, okay, I'll kill your Ember Beast, and then, I will have a 3/3 White of Precinct 6 when all the dust settles.
Seems reasonable.
Except that Sam's opponent had sided in Beckon Apparition.
Oh.
And he removed the creature from his own graveyard, making both Whites of District 6 into 1/1s.
Oh, that's
And they
savage.
just crumpled beneath the weight of the Ember Beast. Ooh. He had a 1/1 flyer, 2 3/4s, and Sam was left with nothing.
Yeah, I mean, that's the game right there.
Just a backbreaker. Definitely one of the really exciting limited plays I've gotten to see.
Beckon Apparition for the win.
Yes.
It's quite a mouthful, that, isn't it, really?
Yeah.
Like Beckon Apparition, like mugging for the win, you can get behind. But Beckon Apparition for the win, I don't know. Listen, I can tell you that we have the standings after round 3.
Exciting.
The last result is in. So this is our first chance to look at this. We will plug our way through no fewer than 42 undefeated players. That's
so 42
our pod
pods.
scoreboard. So you can see 2 3-0 players there. Don, of course, and Shi Bin. But what we've got is all 42 of the 3-0s. Pick some names out, Brian.
Do you want to go? Do you want to do all 42 of them?
How quickly can we do this? In one breath?
Sure. Ian Joshua, Eric Froelich, Paul Rennie, Melissa DeTora, Andrew Cuneo, Shi-Tian Lee, Raymond Venus, Paul Rietzel, Roberto Gonzalez, Stanislav Sivska, Andreas Fatio, Robbie Bollock.
Then Virgilio Santos, David Glacier, Timotei Simoneau, Daniel Alling, Marat Asanov, Jason Myatt, Fabian Dickman, and Lucas Xiao. Now we're into the 20s.
Paul Pedrakowski. This is Peter's brother. Who won
Brother
a
of
BTQ.
Tomic. Yeah.
Oh, Tomic, I'm sorry. Stephen Mann, Pablo Ginner, Stefano Ferrasi, Jeremy Ross Latour, Bertil Elfgren, Matteo Orsini Jones, Zebin, Robert Jerkovic.
Tom Martell is in 30th right now, Kelvin Chu, Alex Gerlach, Herbert Engleitner, Donald Van Ravensvair, we've just spoken to, Vince Grauck, Justin Franklin, Isaac Egan, Craig Leach, Felipe Tapia Bechera, Joel Larson, Matthew McCulloch, and Brian Eason. So there you're 42. We've name-checked them all, but some stellar names in there. Eric Froelich. Now, this is a man who understands about odds and luck going your way and lady luck and fortune favoring.
I don't know that he understands about luck going his way. If you've ever followed him on Twitter, he is often bemoaning his poor fortune.
Sure. Well, he was one of the players who drafted at a pod of 7 and began the day with a bye.
Yes.
There were 7 players who were the odd one out at the odd draft table.
One of the odd features of starting with draft is that someone, that's
sure. But I mean, at every Pro Tour, we have those players doing that. But Eric Froelich begins with a win by not playing.
And fabulous tiebreakers.
And then does the business, makes it count by going, tell you what, you don't often get a chance to start a Pro Tour at 1-0 without shuffling a card. How about we go 3-0? And he has, so well done to him.
And interestingly, when I talked to him at the start of the tournament, he said to me that he wasn't really worried about playing the field, but he was really worried about playing his teammates. He was really worried about playing against Luis Scott Vargas and Paulo Vitor Damaduros, and he's like, I really just need to 3-0 my pod and fade those guys.
Let me tell you what's coming your way right now. We are heading in to going inside R&D for Gatecrash. We've got Boros, we've got Demir, we've got Gru, we've got Orzov, and we've got Simic. The full story of how all those guild mechanics came together, how the art came together, the flavor, the design, the development, it's all here, and that is coming up for you approximately now.
I know the Azorius is really good at laying down the law and keeping the citizens on the straight and narrow, but honestly, don't you wish just sometimes you could lower your lance and layeth the smack down? Let's assemble the Legion and go inside R&D with the Boros Guild.
So the Boros Legion is the guild that embodies red and white mana. Red and white are not allied colors, they're enemies, which means that there's some interesting friction there. Red is all about action. White is all about the greater good. It's not necessarily about taking action. In some cases, white stultifies action. But the Boros marry these two values. They work for the greater good through military force. Their role is sort of an enforcement role. They are more interested in enforcing the laws and laying down the smack on those who break them. In fact, if they can't find laws to enforce, yes, they will challenge Azorius rule and they'll make some laws of their own specifically to enforce them.
6 years ago, we ran a reality competition called the Great Designer Search, where we were trying to find designers. 4 years later, we did the Great Designer Search 2. And the 2 people we hired from that were Ethan Fleischer and Sean Main, both of which were heavily involved in the design of Gatecrash. Battalion was actually one of the mechanics that Sean Main made during the competition of the Great Designer Search 2. It was called Assault when he made it, but it's now called Battalion. And basically what it is, it says, look, if I'm attacking with 2 other guys, I get better. And the thing I love about it as a Boros mechanic is it does what you want to do as Boros. It just says, hey, just attack with everybody.
So way back at the beginning of the Great Designer Search, before I was even in the top 8, when I was in the 101 people who had to create worlds, I was playing around with this heavy token theme. Is this very grandiose armies fighting each other. And I was trying to come up with a way to get these players to attack each other when they've got these armies that might easily die as you're trading back and forth. And the idea that you wanted to be attacking with a certain threshold of creature, that if I attack with 3 guys, I'll get a bonus for doing it. So maybe sometimes you're encouraging people just to do what they want to be doing, but some of the time it's nice to have these little 1/1 tokens but they're going to die along the way. And that was kind of the genesis of it.
The trick with developing Battalion is you want to have a bunch of creatures such that when they're not battalioning, the rate on them is still good enough that you want to put them in their deck. But when they're going off, you don't want your opponent to just be bananas dead because all of your creatures are gigantic and huge. So the way we ended up doing this was to have the Battalion abilities be, rather than just, oh, all of my creatures are huge and you lose, to be sort of these more oblique advantages that let you accrue sort of value in different ways. Like, Daring Skyjack just gets to keep attacking when you're battalioning with him because he gets flying. So you're going to have Battalion again on your next turn. Bomber Core lets you get your creatures through for extra damage and, prevents them from blocking. So having Battalion generate value like this, as opposed to just, killing your opponent immediately, lets you sort of continue the game and have a lot more fun with your creatures once you've actually managed to turn them on.
The new guildmaster of the Boros Legion is the angel Aurelia, who seized power pretty aggressively. Aurelia has reorganized the Boros military strategy from the top down, has divided the Legion into 4 theaters, each with a different purpose, and has embarked on a bunch of military improvement programs that she calls the Warmind Initiative. And that includes some cooperation with guilds that the Boros aren't used to working with. It turns out that some Izzet guild mages are pretty good at weapon and defense design, for example.
So early on in Gatecrash's development, we sat down, looked at all the guild leaders, and decided which ones we liked and which ones we didn't. And the ones we didn't like, we wanted to give new abilities. So we wanted to do what we call hole filling, where we talk to everyone on the development team and have them pitch new ideas for what the card should do. With Aurelia, I was thinking about what red does, what white does, what Boros wanted to do, which was attack a lot of times. And so Relentless Assault, that untap all your creatures and they can attack again, that's a perfect ability for the Guildmaster of Boros. So I put that on Aurelia, and we basically never looked back. Her numbers changed a little bit, but her ability never really changed throughout all of development. She attacks, all your guys can attack again. If they have Battalion, it triggers twice, so your guys that are getting +2/+2 now get +2/+2 again on the second attack. When their creatures can't block, you can make another creature not block. And she's a great Boros card, and great in other decks too.
So over time, creatures have become more and more important to Magic. And if you're going to have better and better creatures, you got to have a way to deal with them. And Gatecrash has guilds that have some of the strongest removal traditionally. So you've got Orzhov, black-white, and you've got Boros, which is red-white, which is my favorite guild. And I was constantly pushing the team to push the creature removal in the set. And it got to the point where I had an opportunity to submit a rare for a rare hole, and I submitted a card called Stun Ray. And this card was similar to Rolling Thunder, but it also, if you used it in small doses, would impact both players and creatures to stun them in a way. This card ended up doing really well in internal playtesting, and it got promoted to Mythic Rare, and it is now known as Aurelia's Fury. And if you need to get the job done when you need to kill creatures, Aurelia's Fury definitely gets the job done.
One of the challenges of doing designs for the guilds is making sure that they have their own identity. So for example, in the first set, Rakdos is very aggressive. Well, in Gatecrash, Boros and Gruul are very aggressive. We want to make sure we separated them. So Gruul, for example, tends to be bigger, meaning you're trying to ramp up into larger creatures, and that where Gruul shines is the bigger creatures. Boros is all about building up and maintaining and getting to the point where you have a sustained army, because it's the numbers that overtake you with Boros. So we want to make sure that each one had its own flavor, but yet still was aggressive, so we had enough aggressive decks.
My army, my aggression, my guild, Boros. Won't you join us?
You must have been pretty pleased with Izzet, Niv-Mizzet, Epic Experiment. It was all going so well. Well, I've got to tell you that in Gatecrash, you've got some competition. If you can find them, check out the Dimir.
The secrecy of the Dimir has been compromised lately. It is more of a public knowledge that this guild exists. That was already hurdled before. But now the question is more like, what public service does this guild serve? Why keep this guild around if we know they're so good at turning secrets into power over people?
Some players in the first Ravnica block might not have realized that for most Ravnicans, the Dimir were a myth. They weren't a reality. There were lots of depictions of the Guild Pact that showed the 9 guilds of the Guild Pact, and the Dimir were just this vague threat, something that was used to scare children and keep them in line. When the Guild Pact was dissolved, it was dissolved primarily by the hand of the former Dimir Guildmaster, Sadek. So now the fact that the Dimir exist is a pretty open secret.
They believe that they provide a public service of archiving and sharing information. They have a library set up. They have a center where you can come and use Dimir resources. Some people might think that this is a little bit of a cover for more illicit activities that are going on. This is just a distraction from their activities that might go a little deeper, but they have a public face now. They in a way, the Dimir have become part of Ravnica like they never had before.
House Dimir is the guild that consists of blue and black mana. So it is blue at its most evil, its most sinister. This is blue at its conniving and cunning best.
So the Dimir Guildmaster is Lazav, who is a shadowy figure who doesn't go out in public very much. We know that he is a shapeshifter, which means we don't know a lot about him. He is hard to pin down.
So the trick to making Lazav Dimir Mastermind was trying to capture the essence of him. So there are two things you have to know about him. One, he's a shapeshifter. Two, he's an assassin. And so the thing we liked a lot, the mechanic says, you know, as things die, well then I can take their form. And so like, he's really good at killing things and then becoming them.
The key is just playtesting him enough and making sure that there's a good conjunction of things going on there, that the cost is accurate. Fortunately, with the guild leaders, the quadruple mana, colored symbols in the mana cost, right? The blue, blue, black, black makes them tricky to play. And if you play that guy and you mill away their good creature or kill their big creature, you get a big guy in a Dimir deck. That's pretty flavorful. We'll allow you to do that. And you probably don't have that many more big creatures to go along with to supplement your huge creature strategy. Plus, it's unreliable, so you don't always get the big guy out of it.
When I took over the lead design of the set, Cypher was not there. That wasn't the Dimir keyword at the time. The Dimir keyword was a thing we called Grind, which was a milling variant. It's still in the set. It's not keyworded anymore. It's still there. It's fun. I liked it. I wanted to keep it, but it did not work for me as the keyword.
So what I wanted was, I really wanted something that played into the sneakiness of Dimir. Black and blue have a lot of creatures that have evasion. Well, we want some kind of mechanic that like takes advantage of all these sneaky spies moving around. And that's when we came up with Cypher. And the idea of Cypher is the idea of sort of grafting onto a creature in saboteur ability. That, when this creature hits you, it does something. But what we found was that wasn't enough, that you didn't get enough return for your value. So it ended up becoming the spell where first you get the spell, then it get grafted on. And so you're guaranteed of getting the first spell, and if you timed it right, usually you can get in. So normally you can get 2 copies of the spell, and then maybe get more depending on what you put it on.
So Cypher was just one of those mechanics that sort of came to us one day. It was a very exciting thing. Everybody I checked with like, wow, this is like really awesome. I can turn my, creature into any sorts of these various traditional saboteurs. I can become a scroll thief or, a hypnotic specter or any sorts of these things that just sort of the sky's the limit, sort of build your own monster of sorts. It's very exciting, also tricky in that like we traditionally tried to avoid repeated game state effects at common, for example, and like this is like every turn I'm going to draw a card, or every turn I'm going to do this thing that puts a token into play, or all these sorts of stuff that we shy away from. But yeah, it was just this really exciting thing that felt like very like Dimir is about thieves, and like saboteur effects are usually what we've associated with that.
The problem with Cypher is that there's actually not a lot of abilities that you can put on Cypher that fits on the card and is like at all reasonable, especially at like lower rarities. So Rosewater comes up with the idea, and it's like, great, that's awesome. What kind of spells can we put on that? It's like, well, draw a card. Like, all right, great. Discard a card. Okay, sure. See where you're going with this. And it's like, well. So we ended up coming with a few more. Like we have Hands of Binding, which is super powerful and limited. And at Rare, there's a lot of really exciting stuff you can do that's really fun if you're just doing it over and over again. But the real challenge was finding enough space at lower rarities to sort of fill out the rest of the set.
When drafting, one of my favorite Cypher cards is Shadow Slice. It's a 5-mana Cypher card that causes target opponent to lose 3 life. And what I find often happens with this card is you're racing with your opponent, they're bashing you, you're bashing them, and suddenly you cast this. All right, well, you've taken 3 life away from them. And you hit them, and you've taken another 3 life away from them, and suddenly that back and forth doesn't look so back and forth. That 6 life swing with the potential for 3 and 3 and 3 more really swings things in your favor.
Milling, the strategy of taking cards directly from your opponent's library and putting them into his or her graveyard, was an important aspect of the Dimir Guild strategy in the original Ravnica. We knew we wanted to bring that back this time, and we played around for a while with a milling-themed keyword that would kind of go wide on Dimir. A bunch of Dimir cards would have a small milling effect over and over and over and over. But that's not how the original Ravnica did it. Their milling was concentrated on 1 or 2 important cards that you could use over and over and over, particularly a card called Vidalcan Entrancer. And eventually that's where we shifted to in Gatecrash's take on the Dimir Guild. we focused our milling strategy particularly into a couple of lower rarity cards that you could use. Sage's Rodenizen, just one member of a cycle, innocuous blue common card. But you get a couple of them out, and those triggers stack up. Every time you put another blue creature out, more cards go from your opponent's library directly into his graveyard. Undercity Informer is a black card that lets you sacrifice a creature to knock cards in from your opponent's library to his graveyard. You stall out the board, build up a whole bunch of creatures, and then in one fell swoop start sacrificing them, bam, 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 until your opponent's library is empty.
There was still this desire to keep milling as this sub-theme that's kind of layered in there lightly to medium, that both it connected to the original guild, where there were these two very distinct strategies, and it gives having some sideways things is really desirable, because it'll give you different textures as you draft different Dimir decks over time. That one time I'll be playing a Dimir deck and I'll be attacking you with guys, I'll be sneaking through damage, and then maybe another time I'll get some of the key cards that are really milling you, Mind Grind, that are attacking you on this completely different axis. And it's nice to have see those different patterns play out.
My secrecy, my advantage, my guild. Dimir, won't you join us?
A tougher challenge than the Golgari? Well, the Gruul like to fight, and some of them are even taller than you, and with a lot less patience. It's time to go grr with the Gruul.
So the Gruul clans, which are all about red and green mana, are probably the guild least like a guild on Ravnica. And that's because the nature of red and green mana mean that they're sort of opposed to the whole idea of civilization. Now, that might make them seem like they have to work at the margins of Ravnica, but the Gruul clans are quite powerful and have persisted for many millennia. All they have to do is wait for an area to weaken a little bit and move in. They'll use up that area's resources, and now it's Gruul territory. Once it runs out of resources, it's time for more conquering and more raiding and more destruction. Ravnica is such an ancient city, and it has so many layers upon layers of destroyed and rebuilt buildings that there's always places for the Gruul to call their own. In fact, Skarg, their sort of guild hall that's not really a guild hall, used to be a palace. No one even remembers whose palace it was. But this is a place where the Gruul clan leaders can come every so often and smash their beasts against each other, smash their heads against each other, see who the strongest is, and then convene and go back to their own territory.
I think what we try to do in getting Gruul across as to represent how savage they are. You'll notice in the artwork, they aren't static in their poses. They aren't defending or standing there trying to look pretty. They're smashing through stuff. There's rubble flying. They're charging towards you. And like this is a magic thing in general, but if things have teeth, they have big teeth.
So the Gruul guild leader, Borborygmos, is an enormous cyclops who has survived many, many challenges to his rule. Borborygmos has managed to hold on to power through basically sheer strength and grit.
For Borborygmos, we knew he was coming back, and I kept submitting all these designs, and they were always called Borborygmos Boulder Hurler. And he would always sacrifice a land and throw it at something. And we don't really like sacrificing lands. It's not very fun. So we came up with a newer version that discards a land card instead, which is a little more palatable. It doesn't put you quite so far behind. And it sort of evokes the traditional feeling of the Cyclops who takes a giant mountain or something and throws it at a ship.
So Borborygmos is definitely a guy I love. We experimented with a couple of different things in design, but development has made their own creature out of him. And it made me really excited to see him the first time because discarding land to just deal damage to people for free is super awesome. Reminds me of Seismic Assault from back in the day when I built a deck containing 4 Curse Scroll, 4 Seismic Assault, and the rest of the deck was manland, so that you could just hit your Curse Scroll every time and control it with Seismic Assault. I almost qualified for Pro Tour with that deck, and it's very fun.
So of all the 5 mechanics in Gatecrash, the gruel mechanic was actually the last mechanic that we finalized on. The trick about it was the gruel are very simple folk. They like attacking and smashing, and we wanted to sort of capture the essence of the gruel, but in a way that kind of had some complexity in play. So like a simple idea, but something that had some depth to it. And then we came up with the idea of Blood Rush, which was, imagine you had creatures that when you wanted them to be, they could be giant growths essentially. You know, like Viashina Shanktail is a 3/1 first striker, but you could turn it into a spell that grants +3/+1 and first strike. And so the neat thing about it was it doubles. It's a creature we need a creature, it's a spell we need a spell. And that it gives you this nice sort of, it allows you to attack, but also has some choices. So it's sort of, you know, viscery in your face, but also it has some subtlety in how you play it.
We were very flavor driven. What we wanted to try to convey was the mob mentality of these guys. And especially, like, we were enamored of the idea that when one of them engaged in battle, another one would just jump in and help out his friend and just wail on whoever he was fighting. So we came up with something that was originally called Ambush, which is now called Blood Rush, that conveys that. When your creature is attacking and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, another guy just jumps in and helps out.
When we were working on the concept illustrations for the Return to Ravnica and Gatecrash sets, one of the concept illustrators working on the gruel was Alexei Briclo. Alexei showed us this drawing of a young, almost a child, who was part of the gruel clans and was commanding this sort of stampede of beasts. And that image really took hold for us. And we started talking about this wild child archetype. And someone at some point, I can't remember who, mentioned offhandedly, like, wow, could you imagine if that dude was a planeswalker? So meet Domri Raid.
Domri Raid is a red-green planeswalker, and he's all about creatures, which I love. I'm all about big green creatures. I'm all about planeswalkers that have the ability, target creature fights target other creature, because I think fighting is awesome. This guy's a 3-mana planeswalker. He comes out very early. His first ability draws you creatures, and his second ability makes them fight with other creatures. I think that's pretty awesome.
My fury, my freedom, my guild, gruel. Won't you join us?
So you think you've had enough of Selesnya? Well, if you like your gameplay a little bit mean, you could always go and talk with the Ortsov. This is a guild that really means business.
So a guild that has enemy colors is a special kind of challenge, and we actually love this kind of challenge. It is very strange why black and white, for example, might want to work together, why these colors have any kind of overlap at all, and they definitely have more tension built into them than the allied color guilds.
The Orzhov believe, in a sense, that wealth is power and that they can create power through structure. How do you get structure? Through guilt and debt. That's how you get the structure that you need to generate money, and the money will become power, and then the power is translated by the Orzhov into an afterlife.
So one of the things when you're designing a guild is you want to get the right feel and the right flavor. And one of my guidelines is I want to make sure the guy who likes that guild, who wants to play that guild, that the mechanic makes them happy. I don't care if everybody's happy. I want the guy who loves that guild to be happy. Now, it turns out in my design team, I had an Orzhov member, Mark Gottlieb.
The key to finding the keyword mechanic for Orzhov, we still wanted it to play like Orzhov. It's not an aggressive guild. Mark Rosewater defined it as a bleeder guild, a bleeder mechanic, that it would sit there, it would stall things out, and it would just poke at you, poke, 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 just taking your life points just a little at a time. So the rest of the guilds in Gatecrash are reasonably aggressive, and a lot of the mechanics care about attacking. This was the counter to all of that. Slow things down and win on its own terms.
For the Orzhov extort mechanic, we had some concern that this would be a little too grindy and painful. Just extort you for one, extort you for one. Oh, 20 turns later, I finally win. We needed something that was going to cause the games to progress a little faster than that. So we made cards like the Knight of Obligation. The Knight, being a 4-mana 2/4 with Vigilance, you do feel like you are powerful and you can extort and be safe. However, the vigilance encourages you to attack as well so that you can get some damage through and get that game over in faster than 20 turns.
So with Obsidian Ghost Council, the goal here is to have a redux of the original Ghost Council from Ravnica, sort of in an attempt to have kind of some callbacks to the original Ravnica. And the original Ghost Council is BB44. When it enters the battlefield, you get to drain your opponent for 1, and then it has the ability that lets it flicker in and out of play. And so we knew we wanted to have some sort of variant on that, but not have it be quite the same, have it be new, have it be something that doesn't relate to combat damage being on the stack, for example. And so Obsidian came out of this in pretty similar vein, but in a much more powerful fashion, in that Obsidian just by himself represents this awesome threat and doesn't rely on other creatures to be awesome. He's just sort of in play, dominating your opponent all the time.
The Vizkopa Guild Mage is a good example of how we changed the Guild Mages between original Ravnica and Return to Ravnica. Now, in the original Ravnica, they were all hybrid. So Orzhov Guild Mage was a white or black card, meaning you spend white on it, or you could spend black on it, or both if you needed to. And it had 2 abilities, one activated for white, one activated for black. But the new one, they're gold, meaning you have to have both to use them, and it has 2 abilities again, but both require both color mana. And what we did is, we made them so they were synergistic. One of them, for example, grants you lifelink. The other, whenever you gain life, your opponent loses life. And so they're synergistic. So either one is good, or you can use them together to make something even more potent.
One of the interesting things about being on the development team is that the set's already in a playable state when you get it. But the cards are basically black and white stickers stuck to real Magic cards. And so we play games of Magic, we draft with them, but there's no artwork, and they're all placeholder names. And sometimes the placeholder names are wacky, but sometimes they're incredibly flavorful, and it really helps you get into the mood of what guild you're playing. So Merciless Eviction had one of my favorite playtest names. It was called Prayer of Disintegration.
Originally, it had said exile target permanent and each permanent that shares a type with it. So there's this very weird play pattern that you would get into, where if I wanted to kill your guy, or if I wanted to wipe out all creatures, I might not target your guy because you might have some way to sacrifice him. I would target my creature, and that would clear the board.
Merciless Eviction is kind of the epitome of Orzhov, I think. Whereas, say, Azorius is about control and law. Merciless Eviction is about penance, and really, really bad penance.
My consecration, my commerce, my guild. Orzhov, won't you join us?
Blue and green mana are a funny old combination of colours, and in Gatecrash that leads to a funny old combination of crocodile frogs, lizard drakes, fish mutants, and things. Let's go meet the Simic.
The Simic Combine is looking for progress most of all. They want to move Ravnica forward. And the way they know that this is going to be accomplished is by changing themselves, by evolving life, making the living beings of Ravnica into the grand future that they know is possible. Their methods might be questionable to some of the other guilds. They're not afraid to experiment on themselves, to give themselves new adaptations, new forms, to grow new limbs, to grow new eyeballs, to grow wings. Anything that they see as necessary to make themselves into that future that they envision.
Simic is the guild that takes parts of all kinds of creepy, greasy, slimy little creatures and pulls them apart and puts them back together in different interesting ways, which is kind of the most fun part of concept art. It's like, oh, no, you don't have to draw that perfectly. You actually want to draw it a little bit weird. I want to be a little uncomfortable when I look at this, but still put notes of like, but I can believe it.
When we were working on Simic, we had to find some kind of common ground between these two colors. And in a way, we wanted to grow past what we had established for the Simic before. We wanted to go even further. Like, what is the ethos of this guild, of this making sense of these two enemy colors coming together? And what we came up with was using blue's curiosity and blue's desire to move forward and create more progress, and combine it with green's emphasis on life, using life in a way that green normally wouldn't, and focusing on strength and flesh the way blue normally wouldn't.
Evolve is something special. Everyone in R&D, all the designers, all the developers, they just love it. There's usually some detractors, someone who's like, I don't believe in this, I don't think it's fun, it's not the way I play, but Evolve taps into something literally primordial. Like, taps into something that it's a play style that rewards you for just playing creatures on curve, building up your army, and it brings the small guys up along with them. That one drop, he's usually not that good on turn 6. Well, an Evolve one drop is.
Before I came to Wizards, I was in a contest called the Great Designer Search 2, which was a sort of apprentice-style battle where Mark Rosewater played the part of Donald Trump, and we all tried to prove that we were equal to the task of being Magic designers. And we each had a world that we were designing cards for, and I had a sort of dinosaur world where thousands of years passed every day or something. And so I wanted to be able to show time on a grand scale. So I worked throughout the competition refining a mechanic that eventually came to be called Evolve. And by the end of the contest, I nailed it down to the point where whenever a creature with greater power than this one comes onto the battlefield under your control, this creature gets a +1/+1 counter. So the creature was responding to competition in its environment by becoming larger.
So I'm really excited that Evolve is seeing print. Back during the Great Designer Search, when me and Ethan Fleischer, we both were a little bit in competition with each other. He'll say he didn't feel the sense of competition, but I definitely felt at odds with him.
There was no competition. I had it in the bag from day one.
And so every time he did something that, really was cool, I felt like, oh, someone else maybe is taking away my chances of getting this job in the end because they did something exciting. And Evolve was definitely a case of that, where he found something and it clicked and it did something in a kind of unique way that was exciting. And I had to be like, oh no, why didn't he do something terrible? But, I'm here now, and I think it's exciting that it's finally seeing print. And I'm excited to play with it.
So Prime Speaker Zagana is sort of typical of many of the Simic designs we came up with, in that she has the Evolve mechanic and then has an ability that triggers when she evolves. We discovered that there's a lot of design space there. There's a lot of design space around +1/+1 counters. And so we had tons of exciting designs. We had to throw away lots of good card designs just because there's so many great ones. And we tried to put the very best, most splashy, most exciting one on the guild leader. And I think we have a very appealing card there.
Prime Speaker Zagana was actually two forces kind of coming together. One thing was the Simic had, because of its Evolve mechanic, cared a lot about +1/+1 counters, and because of that, cared about size, how big things were. And so we definitely wanted a card that sort of said, hey, there's value of having big things, but we wanted a card that kind of helped offset the biggest problem of the big things, which is making sure you don't run out of cards. So she's nice in that she says, oh, well, I turn your sort of beef into cards, which is very powerful, and the Simic really can use that.
So for 6 mana, she comes into play, and she gets counters equal to the large creature you control. So that's pretty good. So let's say you have a Wolfear Silverheart play, for example. That's just a 4/4. So she comes down as a 1/1, she gets 4 +1/+1 counters, great. So then her ability goes on the stack, it says you draw cards equal to power, and you link her up with Wolfear Silverheart, and suddenly you're drawing 9 cards for 6 mana, which is crazy. She works great with any soul bond creatures. If you have any kind of giant growth effects in your hand, you could use those in response to her ability to draw more cards. And also, just in any kind of green-blue deck where you're evolving your creatures up higher and higher, you can play her down, and suddenly, you're 6/2 with mini +1/+1 counters on it. This is contributing to Zagana, making her huge, letting you draw a lot of cards. It's like a control deck's worst nightmare to have to fight against this creature. My vision, my evolution, my guild. Simic, won't you join us?
Hey, how you guys doing? Rashad Miller here with Brian David Marshall.
Hey, everybody.
We just watched 3 rounds of awesome draft format with Gatecrash, and now we're going to get to the meat. This is what everyone likes to see. We're going to see some awesome brand new Gatecrash standard.
Not entirely brand new standard. We've had a couple weeks of people trying to get enough cards to build their decks, and playing in some opens and whatnot. So there's a little bit of foundation for what this format might look like.
So we may see some 3-ofs instead of 4-ofs.
Yeah, exactly. But obviously, groups have been hiding their best decks. So this is where everything comes out to play.
Right. And speaking of coming out to play, we're going to see some awesome deck archetypes here, and we're going to start off with just mentioned not really an archetype.
It is an archetype. I would say that Boros Reckoner is an archetype.
I'd like to think of it as a card that inspires you to pick your favorite archetype that could either cast red and or white spells.
Right, and that's absolutely what's happening. The card was just flying from the dealer tables all weekend leading up to this event, or all week leading up to this weekend, I should say. Everybody's either playing it or
they're ready for it.
Or they're ready for it, right? They're we've seen, mana gargoyles that are indestructible.
Gloom Surgeons. I've heard about Gloom
Surgeons. We've seen, not that Gloom Surgeon quite deals with it, but,
It gets in the way.
It gets in the way. We've seen Abrupt Decay and all sorts of, edict effects. So for example, Devour Flesh and
Tribute to Hunger.
Tribute to Hunger is a card that's just been, I heard it called a lightning helix.
The two life actually comes in handy. And the Boros decks that we're talking about, the Boros Reckoner decks that we're talking about, are Naya decks, be it humans or some type of mid-range deck.
Sure. And the reason it's interesting in the Naya deck is so you can start off with an Avacyn's Pilgrim off of, let's say, a Temple Garden. And
Step 1.
Yeah. And then on turn 2, have enough mana, be able to, play a Stomping Ground, play a Mountain, play a Plains, play, a Plains Shockland.
Yeah.
And be able to cast your Boros Reckoner on turn 2.
Exactly. There's a lot of flexibility in that mana base. Being able to get things out a lot faster and having all the colors that you actually need for something that's red, white.
Right.
Hey, another Boros Reckoner deck. Blue, white, red, which is kind of, started off as the blue, white, red flash decks.
Yeah, and I think that deck still, that deck certainly still exists, and there's a lot of people playing that, and that's all the sort of flash, instant speed creatures and control elements and kind of a mid-rangey blue, white, red deck. What we're seeing now are decks that are, it's almost like people called it Geist deck wins. It's a little lower on the curve.
Is it Reckoner deck wins now?
It might be Reckoner deck wins. And so these decks can do a lot of stuff. There's 2 different ways you can take this. There's a lot of combos you can build off of a Boros Reckoner. So because Boros Reckoner allows you to redirect any damage that's done, or not redirect it, but also deal damage dealt to it to another target, player or creature. If you can make your Boros Reckoner indestructible and give it lifelink, right? This is obviously some hoops to jump through, but people are jumping through these hoops. You can either in combat or otherwise, deal some damage to your Boros Reckoner, redirect it back to itself, redirect that damage back to itself, reloop that damage back to itself, reloop, again, I'm not redirecting, it's still dealing the damage, and then it's dealing additional damage to itself and dealing additional damage to itself, and essentially gaining an arbitrarily large amount of life that your opponent cannot deal with.
Yeah, and it's great for, your Boros Reckoner deck to be able to use Boros Reckoner as more than just a very efficient 3/3 creature.
Right.
It's a win condition, it's a combo, and with, 2 or 3 other cards.
And so, just imagine the following scenario. You have a Nearhearth Pilgrim paired with your Boros Reckoner.
It's in my mind.
And now you have a Frontline Medic.
I see it.
And then you attack. And now you have a life-linked Boros Reckoner, and your creatures are indestructible, and your opponent is never going to block it. But if they did, block it, you would gain infinite life.
Yeah.
But you can also do that with a Boros Charm and an Azorius Charm.
Oh, yeah. We got a lot of 3-card combos going on. There's a lot of ways to do it.
But, you have Snapcaster Mage, so it's kind of like you have almost like 8 of those cards.
Yeah, I can see that. Now, a deck that actually never goes away as far as competitive Magic, mono red, and Boros Reckoner can be played in mono red, so if you like mono red, you're going to run this card, right?
There's so many good cards from mono red. There's Rakdos Cackler is, a fine gentleman. Ash Zealot.
I'm a fan of the Rakdos.
Yeah, that was your. So we did a coverage Pro Tour fantasy draft, and we did it kind of rotisserie style. So when you do it at home, you're unlimited. You can pick anything. But the way we did it is we seeded our picks, and so small creature Rashad had first overall pick, first pack in the draft, and he took Rakdos Cackler.
I think there's going to be a lot of red here. And we're going to find out if there's going to be a lot of Boros decks, a lot of mono red decks, any red black decks, any type of aggressive red strategy.
Yeah, premium aggressive creatures at 1, 2, 3. Yeah. Great red removal that is versatile in being able to go to your opponent's creatures or to the face. Yeah. Really just a good time to be mono red.
Yeah. So now, another deck that just doesn't go away. Across formats, even seeing it more in eternal formats.
We're gonna ignore us for a moment because we're gonna fight.
Okay.
This is not that deck.
I know it's not that deck.
I think we've just accept, and I'm sorry, Flavor Team, that regardless of whether or not we're in Lorwyn, that red, green, black decks are forevermore Jund. And it doesn't mean that they have Bloodbraid Elf and, they probably have Deathrite Shaman, though.
But what you do.
Jund is just that color combination. The same way we refer to Esper, somewhere on your list here. Yeah, we Grixis, black, white, green decks, known as junk decks.
Yeah. Not really. They don't really have a name unless
they haven't had a set yet.
Yeah, unless you go back to, Invasion Block.
Right, you can go with the dragons.
Yeah, the Anivol, like the Volvers.
Oh, the Volvers,
yeah,
sure,
the
yeah,
Volvers.
Yeah.
You guys can gather a Volver.
We're being old.
Yes,
ignore us.
We're the old man here. So we actually have the players there. They're getting ready. So I want to skip around on this list that we have because I believe we're going to be watching Sam Black play.
Very exciting. So is Sam playing against?
Sam Black is playing against Martin Yuza.
So that is the Star City Games Black team.
Yep.
Versus the Channel Fireball team.
Yeah.
That's these are really the two biggest squads with the two biggest collections of talent on the Pro Tour. Hall of Famers, soon to be Hall of Famers on both sides of the room, yeah. And Sam Black has really become like the inspirational guy for the Star City team. Like he comes up with the ideas.
Okay.
And Sam's playing a deck that we like to call the Aristocrats.
Or, dead humans. Or it's similar to the human reanimators, except Sam's guys, they don't come back.
I could tell you what was in Sam's deck, but it would take me about 35 minutes and it would be filthy.
Yeah, so and instead of us trying to explain it, let's just get down to the match so that we can see Sam Black versus Martin Yuza.